Good evening, everyone. Tonight's video is going to be a little bit more controversial in nature. So if you're new to this channel and this particular video brought you here, welcome. I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up on who I am, why I'm talking about this, and where I'm coming from. I do generally focus on conservative commentary. However, tonight's video is not about partisanship. There will not be partisanship bias. This is a very personal and highly nuanced sort of discussion for me. So I, on my channel, try to focus on unity versus division. I don't enjoy pushing polarization. I would rather diminish that and reduce that. And I try to encourage open conversation, a balance between empathy and rational thought. So I'm going to be doing that tonight. But this video is really personal to me. This topic is personal to me in a way that maybe a lot of people don't understand, which is why I feel like it's important to get out. So first of all, if you're not comfortable with me speaking about gynecological issues, women's health, and some really intense emotional stuff, while I'm in a grounded place, I'm not going to break down crying or anything. It is a really intense topic, so you might not find this particularly palatable or comfortable, and you may want to just head out now if that is the case. So basically, transgenderism specifically, and of course transgenderism in children, have not been a part of my life, my day-to-day life. They don't generally affect me in a personal way, so I haven't felt like the need to do any commentary on them as of yet. But that has been changing over the last few months, I guess, since I kind of have been getting my channel going. First, I met a transgender person named Ellie. Now, Ellie was a man and transitioned to be a woman. However, did this much later in life, as an older adult. And she's very concerned, again, as much as I am, about transgenderism in children and the choice to do things like puberty blockers. So starting to get chatting with her and watching her videos, I got to thinking and doing more research about puberty blockers, and I found out that there's a certain drug that is often chosen for young boys when they want to transition to be a girl, and it is called Lupron. Now, Lupron is what they call a GnRH agonist, and a GnRH agonist stands for gonadotropin releasing hormone agonist. Long fancy way of saying that at sort of a neurological level, it will stop the hormone production. It will alter your hormone production and put your body into sort of a false state. For women, it's often used for endometriosis. I know that because I was diagnosed with endometriosis many years ago and have used Lupron 3 times. It's also used for men who have prostate cancer. So it's a very effective, very powerful drug. It's a very risky drug as well. So when I found out that this medication was being used for young boys, I felt a knot in my gut and my heart sank, and I have been feeling really bothered by it ever since. Now, Lupron, for women, the reason they use it for endometriosis is because it sort of puts you into fake menopause. It tells your body not to produce estrogen, and that is why it is dangerous, because if you take it for too long, and if you take it without hormone replacement therapy, which is called Premarin, you basically can have a high risk of osteoporosis because, of course, bone density is very much determined by your hormone profile. So I took it years ago for about 6 months, which was considered at the time the maximum to take it because of this risk of bone density loss. And I had good success with it because my disease was active at the time and it did help it to stop growing. Now, I had tried many other different synthetic hormones as well, so I have a lot of opinions on synthetic hormones in general. Many of them had really bad adverse effects. But Lupron was interesting because the second and third time I took it, I had far worse effects. It seemed like the cumulative effect was bad for me, particularly like 2 years ago when I was taking it. Really bad anxiety, hot flashes to the point of just night sweats and not sleeping at all. So my anxiety was through the roof. It was really negative for me, and it wasn't helping because my disease was too far gone. It was no longer active and hormone based. It was just old scar tissue. So my experience with Lupron is fairly intensive, and I think I have done a fair bit of research as well as had my own personal experience. And the message I really need to get across on this, if you remember nothing else about it, is that it is no joke. It's a very intense medication. So when I find out that they're giving this medication, among others, to young children, even under the age of 12, I can't help but be horrified and very concerned for the health of that child, the physical health as well as the mental health. Because if you're not even supposed to give marijuana to someone under the age of, say, 15, although I think the age is actually like 20 to 25 is what specialists, would prefer to see because of the developing mind of a young child, if you can't give them that benign of an herb, then what are we doing giving such potent synthetic hormones and hormone blockers and things like that to children? So this issue kind of sat in the back of my mind for a while, but it didn't still affect me too personally until more recently, when I sort of had someone in my life in a somewhat distant capacity, but there's a connection where I'm sort of working with this person to do a favor for someone who's helping me a lot with my channel. Now, this is a young person, 14 years old, who is female, transitioning to be male. That wasn't a problem. I decided to help, no big deal. But I started to watch the content and realized quickly that this person was going to be starting hormonal treatments to transition. So in this case, taking synthetic testosterone. Once I found that out, I had the exact same feeling that I had in my gut when I found out about Lupron. I felt sick, I felt angry and frustrated, and I just didn't know where all these emotions were coming from, and they didn't settle. That night I went and laid down and I couldn't sleep for about 2 hours. I tossed and turned and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It's just been heavy on my heart. I've been trying to make this video for 2 weeks, but it just hasn't been the right time. It was too emotional each time. I've had, outbursts of emotion the last few weeks, and I've really had to sit down and self-reflect and figure out what is my problem. And, sadly, many people might have you believe that I would just be some sort of, transphobe bigot that has cognitive dissonance, and that's what I'm going through. But no, that's not it at all. Couldn't be farther from the truth. What I determined through all of this is that it goes much deeper than that. So of course, there's number one, the major concern that I have with pharmaceuticals being used for young children with developing minds, and wondering what is that going to do to them in the future, because it affects everything from your heart health to your bone health to your mental health and every other body system. Endocrinology is very important, and we cannot take it lightly. So I'm very concerned that in the name of compassion to help people feel better in the moment, we have parents that might actually be sacrificing their child's longevity and overall health, and that really frightens me. But it takes it level even deeper than that, and that's where we come down to the discussion of sterilization. So to give you a bit of context with why I know anything about Lupron, and I swear I'll bring it back if you can stay with me for a few more minutes. I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was about 21. I suffered with it for about 8 years before I was diagnosed. Not uncommon. I think the average for women is about 7 to 10 years before they get a diagnosis. They often suffer terribly. I was one of those cases. From the age of 13 on, I had nothing but chronic pain, terrible issues with my GI tract. I ended up in the hospital, passing out. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. I had my first laparoscopy at age 21 to diagnose the disease. I did enough research, found out about the disease, realized it sounded like me, got myself referred, had myself taken into surgery. They treated it. I had 2 more minor surgeries after that. I've had my uterus removed. I've had my cervix removed separately. And most recently, in October 2017, they took both tubes and my right ovary. All because endometriosis, over the course of many years, despite my many efforts, although, knock on wood, the disease hasn't been active for a while now. Since this last surgery, they didn't find much. It's all old scar tissue, so I think I've been doing something right, natural health and all sorts of things. I've learned how to manage it. But sadly, all of my organs were just damaged one by one, and this disease ruined them. It scarred them. It ruined them. And they had to take them out. Now, I'm sure you can piece 2 and 2 together, that if you take a woman's organs like that, they cannot bear children. So I have been barren since age 25, I guess it would be. And that's been an interesting journey as a young woman. Now, I made the decision. I made it in a very conscious way. I had a psychologist evaluation and a psychiatrist evaluation, which were mandatory by the gynecologist to do the procedure. He wanted to make sure I was of sound mind and body. Fair enough, understandable. Because he recognized that at age 25, 26, that I was still so young to make a decision, because many women choose not to have kids till they're with the right partner and so on and so forth. But I had such poor quality of life and I was desperate, and I, made the best decision I could at the time. And I don't regret it per se. Sadly, the cervix and the ovary weren't choices that I even made. They just happened when they went in to explore and said, oh, crap, we got to take these out. So no regrets. It is what it is. I did what I had to do. But even still, with that, all knowing that I was doing it to save myself from excruciating pain, excruciating, like nothing can touch it but morphine, and in the last instance, fentanyl. I had 3 doses of fentanyl in 4 hours because I couldn't touch the pain. I kept passing out. It was horrifying. Not to mention ketamine. They gave me ketamine as well. Also horrifying experience. So when I say that I did this to try to save myself, I mean it. But even still, the pain from that and the grief from that, when you do find the one that you love and you're going to marry and you can't bear children with them, is astronomical. And I see I'm not going to make it through this video unscathed either, but it doesn't matter. I'll keep it together enough. So when I see a young child, a young beautiful girl, who believes that she is not a girl, she is a boy in a girl's body, and she chooses to take hormones to change into a different person, thereby ruining her healthy, beautiful female organs, it feels awful. Because all I can think is, I wish that I could just transplant them somehow so that I could have this second chance to be a mother, and I can't. Now, that being said, it has nothing to do with me, but all I can think of is if I have these regrets despite doing this out of what I believe was a necessity, at the time anyway, how is this kid going to feel in 10 years if they realize that they just gave up the chance that they had to experience motherhood? How can you know when you're that young what gender you are if you haven't experienced life as that gender? You haven't really experienced it. I don't feel like I knew who I was till I was about 29. And honestly, I'd say last year, 31, was probably the year of my most large epiphanies and aha moments. I can't imagine how many people are going to regret this on an emotional level, let alone the physical repercussions and risks of these drugs, the shortening lifespans, the risk of mental health and suicide, cardiovascular risks, bone density risks, and so on. I get where parents are coming from. I think that it's really hard to watch your kid go through pain, and if they believe that they're in the wrong body and you want to help them, and in many cases kids are mature. I was a mature kid. I was wise beyond my years, but I was still a kid, and there was a reason I couldn't drive or vote or make massive life decisions. And I'm very worried that these kids and these parents are just accepting automatically that it has to be gender dysphoria and therefore this is the answer. And out of compassion for the kids, the parents will put them on these drugs, which are legal in Canada and doctors are allowed to prescribe. I didn't even know that until recently. And then what, though? You don't want your kid to suffer emotionally for a few years, so you take the chance of killing them? And I'm not being hyperbolic. This isn't a joke. These drugs aren't a joke. I've taken more synthetic hormones than I can even list. They're no joke. And I'm so concerned and so sickened by all of this because I don't want these kids to suffer, but I also feel like there's a lot of times where maybe they're going through something different than gender dysphoria and they don't know it yet. Maybe they are highly sensitive, empathic kids. Maybe they don't fit in another way, or maybe they are gender dysphoric. However, to sterilize yourself in many ways or ruin the chance of children and making irreversible damage at such a young age, and having the government and parents and teachers going along with and encouraging this does not feel like compassion to me. It doesn't feel like empathy. It feels evil. I would never wish this grief of losing the ability to be a mother on anyone, trans or not. And it does suck to see people destroying and sacrificing the very healthy, beautiful bodies they're given for feelings. And I know feelings. I know intense feelings. I know what it's like. It can be very unpleasant, very difficult to go through depression and everything else. And I don't want people to suffer within their own bodies. And I encourage parents to let their kids dress as a guy or change their name or whatever they have to do when they transition. But hormones as kids, and a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, even under 18, I think they're kids. And then to talk about 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and then to talk about kids doing drag. You know, these kids like that Desmond kid down in the States doing drag at like age 10. And videos of that other kid who's talking about doing ketamine. Yeah, my ketamine experience included it paralyzing me in a way that I couldn't speak or get my thoughts out, but I was in so much pain. It felt like I was on fire and I couldn't talk and I was just puking and trying to talk, and it was so fucking traumatic. And then I see some video about some kid pretending to do a bump of ketamine. You know, and we're all joking about puberty blockers and we're calling out Owen Benjamin, and he loses his job basically in Hollywood, and all respect, because he says as children going through puberty blockers is essentially child abuse. Well, that makes him the worst person ever. I don't know what's happening in the world. If that makes you a bad person, or if this video makes me a bad person, I don't know where we're at then. This isn't right, and it bothers me so much. And it's not just because it's me feeling bad that I can't have kids. I'm over it. I've accepted it to the best level that I can. But you never really get over it. You always will look at those beautiful families and wonder what it would be like. And I would hate for some kid to do this at age 14 and have to go through that 10 or 15 years later for nothing. I don't have a lot else to say about this. As you can see, it takes its toll on me, which is why I feel that I have to say it. I heard from one of my wonderful viewers, who I think heard from Jordan Peterson, that it's those issues that you really stick with you, those really big, compelling ones that are part of your destiny. So I'm saying this because I care, and I hope that I can help someone make a better decision or stop themselves from maybe ruining their life. And that's why I made this video. It's not with hate, it's with love. I hope all of you have a blessed rest of your week. Please take care of yourselves. Please consider this message. It comes from love. And as I always say, be good to each other, but never because your government tells you to. Take care.